How's it going, guys? Welcome back to Beyond the Arc. Now, a quick disclaimer before we get in. I feel like I say this every single week, but apologies for the lack of videos, just assignments and stuff kind of got in the way. I did also try and upload a video last week, but I recorded it. It was about half an hour's worth of content, and then I realised that the audio sounded like this. Also, apologies if I sound raspy or anything like that. That's another reason why I haven't been uploading. My throat's been absolutely killing me, but it's getting there, so I think it's about time to revisit a little bit of the NBA. The All-Star weekend is over. It's been over for a very long time, but this is the first video I've done post-All-Star break, I think, that's not been talking about All-Stars. I did one talking about next year's All-Stars. So this is the first one actually talking about regular NBA basketball. And I feel like there's been a lot of stuff that's been going on, you know. The Knicks are on a 9-game win streak, and they're surging up the East. The Celtics have just lost 3 in a row to teams around them, including that game that went to overtime yesterday against the Cleveland Cavaliers. But I feel like I talk about the East quite a little bit. I feel like I need to shed a little bit of light on the Western Conference, and more especially the absolute tightness of the playoff and the play-in battle. Like, there's literally 2 games separating 13th and 5th in the Western Conference, and I feel like I need to talk a little bit about it. So I'm going to probably end up splitting this video into 2 parts. There is 1 game separating 5th place in the West, which is Golden State, and 8th place in the West, which is the Clippers. And then literally 9th, 10th, 11th and 12th are all on the same record, and OKC are just a half game back, and if they win tonight against the Golden State Warriors, which the Thunder are at home, so that probably will happen, they'll go on 31 and 34 too. So it's absolutely mental, the battle for the final 2 playing spots, and then also for 5th and 6th to get a playoff lock heading into the first round, and to get a bit of maybe an easier draw. So it's going down to the wire pretty much. There's just under 20 games left in the regular season, and I'm not gonna lie, as a fan of a team who has kind of just given up now, or at least if they do try, then they're just gonna get bounced in the first round, or probably not even get into the playoffs in the Chicago Bulls. I'm very intrigued to see what ends up happening out west, especially with the fight for the final 2 playoff spots and the whole of the play-in. And you know, I say I'm splitting it into 2 videos, but there is round about 3.5 games separating 5th from 13th, so Golden State and OKC. And with 17 or so games left, that's still enough time for stuff to get moved round. Imagine if Golden State end up with the 13th worst record in the Western Conference, despite being in the playoffs with just over a month left. Absolutely mental. So let's get straight into the video. But first, before we get into it, make sure you're liking and subscribing to the YouTube channel. Share out the video where you can. And yeah, let's get straight into it. So I'm going to start this video from top to bottom. So I'm going to go with Golden State, who are currently in 5th place. And they've got Steph Curry back. He was injured for quite a little bit. Got injured before the All-Star break. Missed the All-Star game. Was probably one of the reasons why the All-Star game itself ended up with low viewers, because Steph Curry is one of the most entertaining people in basketball. But I digress. Steph Curry is back. But what isn't back is Golden State's ability to win away from home. It's actually crazy how the Golden State are still 5th in the Western Conference despite having a 7-24 road record. That's absolutely mental. For comparison, Detroit also have 7 road wins this season. If you'd have told me at the start of the season that the current reigning NBA champions, after 60-odd games, would have the same amount of road wins as the Detroit Pistons, conversations would need to be had. And conversations do need to be had when it comes to the Golden State Warriors, especially given the position that they're in. You know, 5th place in the conference, that doesn't mean that they're going to get a home tie at all, unless there's more upsets further up. So they're going to end up, at least for the first round, playing 4 times away from home. And they're going to need to pick it up away from home if they're going to end up getting out of the first round, which is kind of mental to say, given that they won the chip last year. So Steph Curry is back though, and that helps. Half a game back from them is the Minnesota Timberwolves. And the Minnesota Timberwolves, I'm not going to lie, I don't pay too much attention to the West. Obviously, I'm a Chicago Bulls fan. I pay loose attention to the West, but I'm way more of an Eastern Conference guy. I didn't think that the Minnesota Timberwolves were this good. And to be fair, the Mavericks haven't had a good run out of All-Star weekend. Neither of the Clippers. The Minnesota Timberwolves have kind of come in from the All-Star break and have kind of had a little bit of decent form. 3 wins on the bounce now. Mike Conley has come in from the Utah Jazz from that massive 3-team trade at the deadline. And he's kind of stabilizing everything. He's a way better true point guard, in my opinion, than D'Angelo Russell is. And I feel like that's good for a team like the Minnesota Timberwolves, who kind of just need a bit of control out on the basketball court. You know, Anthony Edwards, he isn't a point guard. He isn't someone that can pass the ball. You know, he has like a 1-to-1 assist-to-turnover ratio. It's not really too good. But having Mike Conley there, you know, someone who's a premier floor general, someone who's done it for a decade plus in the NBA, is good. Karl Anthony Towns as well, not being playing. You know, he's only played about 29 games this season, and I think that's kind of helped them a little bit. Obviously, we saw at the start of the season when Towns and Gobert were trying to work together, and it wasn't really working that well for them. You know, the double big man in the center there. When Cat comes back, because he's going to be coming back, hopefully, they've targeted at the end of March. When he comes back, is he going to make the team better? Now, Karl Anthony Towns is an all-star level player, in my opinion. But is him being there going to kind of cause a bit of a bad dynamic with him and Gobert again, which would mean that they don't do as well? And there's really no room for error, and I'm going to say that a lot today. There's no room for error to kind of like slip up in this situation. Yes, all of the teams are playing around about 500 balls, so it's not like these are elite teams that are kind of vying for the last few playoff spots. These are teams that are going to drop games. So Minnesota, they can kind of accept that they're going to drop a few, but when Cat comes back, maybe they might explore taking one of him or Gobert off the bench. I mean, we've seen with Chris Middleton in the Milwaukee Bucks, he's come back and he's playing a lot more off the bench. 1, because he's just come back from a massive injury, but 2, because it almost kind of suits the way that the Bucks have been playing recently. Obviously, they had that massive 17-odd game win streak, just ended a couple of games ago. So it'll be interesting to see what happens when Cat does end up returning and how that impacts the Minnesota Timberwolves. Currently occupying the 7th seed out west, a half game back from the Minnesota Timberwolves, is the Dallas Mavericks, the new look Dallas Mavericks that haven't really been gelling together that much. Kyrie comes in, they win a couple of games just with Kyrie. Luka Doncic is injured. And then Luka Doncic comes in, and I'm not going to lie, it's not really looking too good for the Mavericks. Now, obviously, it's going to take them a little bit of a while to kind of gel together, to get used to each other's playing style. Luka and Kyrie, massive egos, 2 of the best NBA players in the league at the moment. So it'll be interesting to see how quickly they can gel, because they're going to need to gel pretty quickly if they're going to want to push for that 6th seed. But yeah, at the moment, they're 2-5 when Kyrie and Luka play together. But we have seen the potential that a Kyrie and Luka pairing can have. Both of them scored 40 points against the Philadelphia 76ers the other night, which was the first time in Dallas Mavericks history that a duo has scored 40 points each. Which, considering that the Dallas Mavericks have won an NBA championship, that just shows how good Dirk Nowitzki is, really, doesn't it? But yeah, Kyrie's come in. Has he had the impact that many Mavs fans wanted? Probably not, but they've seen that they can do it in the game against the Sixers, and also they pushed the Phoenix Suns to the absolute limit. And this was the Phoenix Suns that had Durant, Chris Paul, Devin Booker, you know, and they almost tied it at the end as well with an open floater that Luka Doncic just missed. You know, when you're kind of like almost too open. So yeah, I mean, I don't think the Mavericks will be looking at that loss and thinking this is bad, but they're going to need to string a few more wins together soon if they're going to have a little bit more faith in Kyrie and Luka, in my opinion. 8th place in the West is the Clippers, so the second playing spot. Now they have the same games back as the Dallas Mavericks, but they've played 2 games more, so they have the same record, kinda, but not the same record, not the same winning percentage. Now the Clippers potentially might benefit from the fact that they only have, if I can do some quick maths, 15 more games left in the NBA season compared to the other teams. They're gonna have a few more nights rest, which for a team that's, you know, a little bit high on the age scale, maybe that can be a good thing for the Clippers. They didn't have a good start out of the All-Star break though. Obviously signed Russell Westbrook, wasn't doing that well, got guarded out the game by not being guarded against the Golden State Warriors, which was quite funny. And obviously, I talked a bit about that in the video that ended up not being posted. But essentially, long story short, do I think that the Westbrook's going to work starting for the Clippers? No, I don't. I think Tyronn Lue's going to need to bring him off the bench, like Darwin Ham, was in across the road from them for the Lakers. So I think for Westbrook to work, that's what's going to need to happen. I don't think he is a person that can start games anymore, especially when there's other superstars on the team like Kawhi Leonard, like Paul George. But Paul George did come through, scored 42 points the other night as the Clippers ended up beating the Grizzlies. So they snapped their 5-game losing streak, and they did it by beating a solid team. And that's obviously going to put a little bit of faith in the Clippers. Obviously, they were spiraling down. I mean, 5 games in a row without a win, that puts you in the conversation that I'm going to talk about a little bit later on, you know what I mean? And they'll have gone from being 4 or 5 games ahead of that 9th seed to now only 2 games ahead. So they're going to need to start stringing a few more games together. They are only half a game back from the 6th seed though, so knowing that they've been able to drop 5 games in a row and still be within touching distance of getting that playoff lock, it's still gonna, it's not out of their reach. And with Kawhi Leonard and with Paul George on the team, I think it's gonna be interesting to see what happens. Now, I just think the Clippers are just a very unlucky team. I think no matter what happens, they're probably just going to end up not choking it, but they're just going to end up being very unlucky, and they're probably going to miss out. I also think that the Minnesota Timberwolves might miss out on it as well. I just think that the Golden State Warriors kind of know how to get it done at crunch time, and I feel like the Dallas Mavericks, you can never bet against a team that has Kyrie and Luka in it, even if they still employ Dwight Powell at center. And no offense to Dwight Powell, but how is he still playing for a playoff level team? Who knows? But yeah, no, there ain't much depth in Dallas, but I feel like the 2 stars kind of like compensate for it pretty well. So I think that they're going to end up in the playoff lock, and the Minnesota Timberwolves and the Clippers, the 2 teams that haven't really had much experience as a team in the playoffs, which is kind of crazy to say with the Clippers, given that they are one of the more older teams in the NBA. I just don't think that it's going to work out for them, in my opinion. Now, this is where it gets tasty, because every single the next 4 teams I'm going to talk about all have the same 31-34 record. And I feel it's a bit strange talking about these in its own separate little bit, because they are still only 2 games back from the Clippers in the 8th seed. But I feel like it's kind of like its own 2 little mini leagues that can obviously switch a few teams around towards the end of the season. So it'll be interesting to see what ends up happening in there. But we start with the Utah Jazz now. Now, the Utah Jazz have kind of been in free fall since like November time. They started the season off like 12-4. They were going mental, but it's kind of every time they've won a game, they've lost 2, and then they'll win another one, and then they'll lose 3, and then it's kind of just been like that, and they've kind of just been on a little steady decline. They have the worst form out of anyone that I'm going to be talking about in this video, including they've lost 3 straight, and they lost against the OKC Thunder last time out. So losing against teams around them, I don't think he's any good. Larry Markkinen hasn't been playing for a little while, but I think it's going to be frustrating as a Utah fan. I'm not a Utah fan, but if anyone's a Utah fan, and I'm not sure if many of them exist, it'll be frustrating to see the team that started so well kind of just peter away, knowing what was kind of possible, knowing that they could have ended up in the playoffs, but equally they kind of know that their team isn't built for the playoffs. They weren't supposed to be in this position. They were supposed to be where the Spurs are and where the Rockets are. They weren't supposed to be winning games. So I feel like if they end up finishing 13th, that's still an alright season for them. They'll still have like the 6th or 7th best odds in the lottery, which I don't think is too bad given the start of the season. And it'll also show that their team can still do good stuff. Walker Kessler is probably one of the standouts from this draft, and he was picked quite late as well. So not having as high of a pick is obviously sucks, especially if they're not going to get any playoff basketball for it. But I feel like the Jazz aren't going to finish any higher than 13th, in my opinion. I feel like they'll win a few games, but I feel like I can't see them winning 37 games. I don't think they'll win 37 games this season. I'll come back to this. I'll see how I feel about it in a few weeks' time. But I don't see Utah winning 6 more games this season. Portland Trailblazers. Damian Lillard, basketball team. He is the MVP. He is too... Well, I mean, he ain't the MVP. But you know what I mean. He is genuinely the most underrated player in NBA history. I feel like that could be a shout. I mean, obviously I might have recency bias, but I feel like Damian Lillard does not get the plaudits he deserves. 1 Rookie of the Year and 1 3-point contest championship is all he has to his name. Given he's one of the best scorers in the NBA, and he still doesn't really get given his flowers, in my opinion. He's by far and away the top scorer in the NBA in 2023, and like second place has like 150 to 200 points less than him. And obviously it helps that he's like scoring 71, but he's literally dropping 40 on your favourite team, and there's nothing you can do about it. It's just the rest of the team that kind of can't seem to catch up a little bit. Anthony Simons has been on and off a little bit with his injury recently, so obviously when he comes back, that's a big plus. Jeremy Grant's still averaging over 20 points per game this season, so obviously they do have people that can score. Defense is a little bit of an issue, but I think the pure scoring that they have might give them a little bit of a chance at, you know, solidifying a playing spot, maybe even trying to break into that little league above them for the 5th and 6th seed. It'd be interesting to see what happens with that one, but let's be honest, Damian Lillard, I'm kind of rooting for him. You know, I feel like out of all the teams that I'm going to mention, I feel like I kind of like the Blazers the most because of just Damian Lillard. I feel like he deserves at least one more last playoff run, right? I think he does. Then below them in 11th is the Los Angeles Lakers. Now, the Lakers have kind of turned a page almost. You know, they were calamitous earlier in the season, but they've kind of slowly and steadily started to rise a little bit. Whilst the Utah Jazz started really well and were never really going on an awful losing streak, but they'd win 1, then they'd lose 2. The Lakers, they've kind of won 2, then lost 1. Won 3 and then lost 1. The little mini streaks the Lakers have been going on, and it's putting them in contention. And this is probably the season that LeBron James has played the least for as a Laker. So to see the other players kind of carry the load, Anthony Davis dropped 39 points against the Golden State Warriors, hit a few clutch shots. I'm always under the belief that a fully fit Anthony Davis is one of the most dangerous players in the NBA, probably the best center in the NBA in my opinion. And I know that's a bit of a hot take, but genuinely, I've seen this man. He is so clutch in big game situations. It's just a shame he's made out of paper mache. So I think the Lakers are probably going to end up in the play-in. They're definitely going to end up in the play-in. Whether they have enough to kind of push on and try and break into that little league at the top, I mean, beating the likes of the Warriors, that's just going to drag them in. So it'd be interesting to see what happens with the Lakers. They're definitely dark horses for sure, but no one kind of treats them as underdogs because they obviously won the chip 3 years ago. So it's interesting to see what happens. And obviously, they've got a few new faces as well that have kind of helped them. D'Angelo Russell off the bench is a good scoring option. Dennis Schroeder coming in and taking the load a little bit. And then obviously, when LeBron James comes back, this team's going to be dangerous. And I can't see any other way that they won't end up in the playoffs. Below them, in 12th, is the New Orleans Pelicans, who have slowly started to decline a little bit. 3-7 in the last 10 games. Zion Williamson needs to come back if the Pelicans are going to make the play-in, I think. And I think if they do make the play-in, even if it is just 10th seed, I can see him sneaking an 8th seed through the play-in. Because we've seen this team in playoff basketball. We know how good they are. They ran the Phoenix Suns to 6 games. I was about to say to the end, but they didn't. To 6 games. They caused them issues when no one expected them to. Zion Williamson is a superstar. He just needs to play more games, man. He needs to stop being so injury prone. Brandon Ingram's one of the best twos, second man in the NBA. And then obviously CJ McCollum we know he can score. We know he can score buckets. And then you've got the likes of Herb Jones, Jonas Valanciunas, all them kind of stuff. And I feel like if they do end up sneaking a playing spot, they have good playoff experience, in my opinion, to kind of sneak themselves into an 8th seed and maybe push the Denver Nuggets to the same way that they did the Phoenix Suns. It's just, will they end up getting that 10th seed? And I don't know if they will. They need Zion Williamson to come back. His timeline at the moment's undecided, so it'll be interesting to see what happens. I think if he does come back, then they will get in the play-in though, because Zion is just that good. So let's see what happens with the Pelicans. I think they're kind of dark horses too, but none more are dark horses than the Oklahoma City Thunder, because they're playing with nothing to lose at all. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander was told 1 more year of tanking, let's go get Victor Wembanyama, and he was like, absolutely not. I am dragging this team to a playing spot if it's the last thing I do. If Shai Gilgeous-Alexander puts this amount of numbers up on a team 4th in the conference, he wins MVP. I don't want to hear anything else. He needs to be in the conversation, but obviously he isn't because his team's currently in the 13th seed. But like I said, if he ends up beating the Golden State Warriors, and the Thunder are at home, so the likelihood that that's going to happen is drastic gone up because the Warriors are bad away from home, then the Thunder end up going level on points with all of the teams above them. And I think the Utah Jazz are playing as well tomorrow. So the Jazz can end up falling from 9th to 13th in the space of a day, which is absolutely mental. So that just shows how absolutely crazy tight it is in the Western Conference. But yeah, Gilgeous-Alexander's doing bits, Josh Giddey's doing bits. Other than that, though, the team's a bit trash. Very young, though, so obviously there's a lot of improvement there. And still have Chet to integrate into the team next year, which is going to be like a 2nd overall pick in its own right. So I think the Thunder are kind of looking at it as a way of, if we get a play-in spot, then that's great. That's a successful season. And then next season, we get a former 2nd overall pick to come in as a rookie. But if we don't do well, then we're going to have the 6th worst record in the NBA. So we're going to get a decent lottery pick as well. So Sam Presti has made it so this team can kind of take any avenue they want, and they're still going to have a solid off-season. And I'm very much looking forward to seeing what happens with the Oklahoma City Thunder. They're playing with nothing to lose. They don't have any pressure. And I feel like that way could kind of make them sneak into the playing spot potentially. Do I think it'll happen though? Probably not. At this moment in the season, I'm thinking Portland and the Lakers as 9th and 10th. If it's between the teams that I've just mentioned there. So I just think that they have too much star power, too much veteran experience that the likes of the Pelicans without Zion, even though he's not even a vet, the Utah and the OKC don't have. And I think that that'll kind of push them over the line into the play-in. But with around about 17, 15 games left in the season, it's so interesting to see what's going to happen, and I'm so looking forward to seeing how this pans out for the rest of the teams out west. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. Let me know who you think are going to end up finishing 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th, and 13th in the Western Conference. And yeah, I will see you guys in the next video. Peace.